Hello and welcome to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast where you will find music chat, new releases, hidden gems and nostalgic deep dives. I am back with another episode in my Throwback Friday series, and I hope you have enjoyed the albums that I have covered so far. The album that I am going to discuss today endured negative reception from both the press and the public, especially in the UK. I am talking about Impossible Princess by Kylie Minogue that was eventually released in the UK in 1998 following several delays, which I will discuss later. Impossible Princess, or Kylie Minogue when it was briefly retitled in Europe, is Kylie's sixth studio album and is the album where Kylie took full creative control and co-wrote every track with collaborators such as Brothers in Rhythm and the Manic Street Preachers. The record became infamous with Kylie's experimental approach and is considered a huge departure from her previous work in the PWL days. Kylie experiments with electronica, indie rock, trip hop and dance music, which she has done before, but the dance cuts on here are so much darker and not commercial in any way. Kylie was not going for big radio hits here. Impossible Princess is personal, reflective, intimate, and a record that Kylie has confirmed that she will never make again. Kylie wanted to make an album which is her personal artistic statement, and the result is something that the public and the UK press was just not ready for. The indie Kylie era was here, accompanied by the iconic artwork. The record received a savage response, especially from critics in the UK. But I'm going to discuss this misunderstood pop record track by track and give you some insights if you weren't around in 1997. And I'm going to talk about its legacy and how there's been a re-evaluation over the years leading up to the vinyl release in October 2022 to celebrate the 25th anniversary. But first, I just want to give you some context to my experience with Impossible Princess and how I discovered it. I became a fan of Kylie during her PWL era when I was around 8 or 9 years old. Kylie and Madonna were the first big female artists that I got into, and I have stuck around ever since. I've always admired Kylie's artistry and watched her grow and take creative risks, such as Impossible Princess. You could say that Kylie was ahead of the curve in 1997, but I'll be completely honest, I was kind of on board with what she was doing, but let me explain. As Kylie's confidence grew into the 90s, I was still a big fan, don't get me wrong, and I still regard What Do I Have to Do as one of the best, most perfect pop songs of all time. But as I grew into the 90s and got older, my music taste began to change. I was still listening to pop music, but I began to expand my overall taste, and this could have been influenced by friends at secondary school, exposure to MTV Europe, or reading a lot of Q magazine, NME, Melody Maker, when I should have been doing my homework. By 1997, I had left school and I became obsessed by Garbage and Tori Amos, and I was discovering the discographies of Sting, Depeche Mode and Simple Minds. My music taste was all over the place, but one thing I didn't gravitate towards was Britpop. That genre is something that I just couldn't get into. It wasn't my style, and the lack of synths annoyed me, and it all started to sound the same and a bit stale. I'm sorry if you're listening and you are a Britpop fan, but that's okay. It just isn't for me. I was aware of the singles from the Impossible Princess era as I saw the videos on a regular basis, but for some strange reason, I just avoided the record when it was eventually released. Maybe reading the UK press and the overall reaction decided this for me, but it was a record that just slipped through the net. I didn't discover it properly until years later. My ex-boyfriend had a copy of the CD in his collection. Turned out that he was a big Kylie fan, especially the indie Kylie stuff. So this was my gateway into the record, and I had to make up my own mind about it instead of reading endless articles and reviews, which was just negative noise. And the record has been with me since. Obviously, when the ex and I split, he kept his copy, and I ended up getting a copy of my own. Fast forward to 2025, and I have the 25th anniversary of the vinyl in my collection, and the beautiful artwork is just perfect for vinyl. I think it is one of my favourite album covers of all time. It just encapsulates the era so beautifully, and you can hear the atmosphere of the electronic tracks through the photography and colours. You could say that the turning point for Kylie was working with Nick Cave in 1995 on Where the Wild Roses Grow, and singing with the Manic Street Preachers a year later during a live performance of Little Baby Nothing, a song that Kylie should have been on originally, but due to her PWL contract, they included Tracy Lords on the vocal. Kylie remained friends with Nick Cave and encouraged Kylie to write lyrics which eventually shaped Impossible Princess, lyrics that came from Kylie's heart. Kylie expressing herself fully and making the album that she wanted to create. Kylie also took inspiration of her then boyfriend, French photographer Stéphane Sedoni, who shot the artwork for Impossible Princess, and together they embarked on trips across the world that had a huge effect on Kylie. Kylie was also inspired by the artists that Stefan worked with, including Garbage and Bjork, and you can definitely hear hints of this throughout the record, but this is Kylie's record, and she was here to make her biggest artistic statement yet. So let's go through the tracks in a bit more depth. As I have stated in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, then please support the artist I cover by streaming or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, Too Far. So this kicks off the record nicely. As soon as it starts, you just know that the sound of this record is going to be a completely different beast. It's got quite a moody, dark intro, and Kylie comes in with some spoken word over a piano riff. Kylie is credited as the sole songwriter on this song, and it certainly makes a statement being the opening track. Brothers in Rhythm's production on this song just matches Kylie's vocal performance, which I would say is quite aggressive. You can tell through her lyrics that she is pissed off and frustrated, and the repetition in the song just adds to the claustrophobic nature of how Kylie was feeling at the time, and this song is just a huge release for her. I've always felt that Too Far has a double meaning. On one level, Kylie is clearly purging her inner demons. It's raw, intense, and cathartic. But on another level, it almost feels like a meta commentary. It's as if she's aware that the experimental nature of this album might be too far for some listeners or critics. Like she's anticipating the backlash before it even happens. As an opener, it's strange and bold, but it brilliantly sets the tone for the emotional and sonic journey ahead. Track 2, Cowboy Style. Another Brothers in Rhythm production. Cowboy Style is quite unusual with the instrumentation. I'd say it's not a straight up country style song, but it's got some Celtic and Middle Eastern influence mixed in with the indie pop. Inspired by Stefan, this has become a live favourite, and I enjoyed this when I saw Kylie on the Fever tour. A completely different shift from the previous track. Cowboy Style is unique, and if this was released in 2025, I suspect it would do very well, as country, as you know, is all over pop music at the moment. Again, Kylie, completely ahead of the curve. Track 3, Some Kind of Bliss. This was released as the lead single here in the UK, and Kylie co-wrote this with James Dean Bradfield and Sean Moore from the Manic Street Preachers, and is a pop rock indie song which wouldn't feel out of place on Everything Must Go. It's got that trademark manic sound with the strings, but I just feel that having this as the lead single just didn't do the record and the era justice, and I think that the following track would have been a better fit. I remember the critics at the time not liking this or Kylie's transition into indie. It's funny because I've been listening to this record again in preparation of creating this episode, and I was thinking about 1997, and the critics really didn't know what to do with Kylie breaking out of the pop mould. This track with a bit of Britpop swagger, it just felt worlds away from what people expected from her. But I would say that Confide in Me back in 1994 was really experimental, so this shouldn't have been such a shock. In 2025, records that are experimental in nature are often met with critical praise. We now celebrate mainstream artists who push the boundaries and reinvent themselves and not make the same album twice. Track 4, Did It Again. So we are back with the Brothers in Rhythm production, and this served as the second single. As I was preparing for this episode, I went back in time a bit to remind myself what the press were actually writing about Kylie at the time, and they were not writing nice things about her, being intrusive about her private life, her weight and how she looked, but not writing about Kylie the artist. You could say that Did It Again is Kylie's response to that. It's up-tempo, blending pop rock nicely, and it really suits the overall theme of the song. Kylie's vocal performance is quite mean and a bit aggressive, and you really feel with what she's saying. I don't think the themes of the song would fit with an electronic production here, and I think when you see the iconic video, it all comes together in a really satisfying way. Track 5, Breathe. One of my favourites here and one of my all-time favourite Kylie tracks. I will be honest, I'm more used to the single version, which is a little bit faster, and that is my preference, but any version of this song is fine with me. I adore electronica, and the arrangement of this is just so effective. Kylie's breathy, calm vocal style just suits the spacey electronic production, and this track is just perfectly placed in the record. You know, I sometimes forget about this track, and then it will pop up in one of my playlists just randomly, and I discover it all over again, and then I just become completely obsessed. This happened recently before I started my podcast, and This song was all I was listening to. It just has that addictive, hypnotizing quality. I think the chorus repetition on the outro is like a mantra. Kylie is inviting us to breathe with her. I just think this track is genius, and when I read that Kylie came up with the synth break and the song's bridge, it just makes me appreciate it even more. I could go on and on about the greatness of this track, and if you have not heard this before, turn down the lights, light a candle, and just lose yourself in this beauty. Track 6, Say Hey. This follows Breathe perfectly with its pumping dance beat and electronic production. Kylie's vocals are soft, quite hushed, trance-like, and the placement halfway, it really works for me. Listening to this again recently, I noticed that this just does not sound dated at all. You hear some songs from the 90s and you can tell straight away what decade it's from, but Say Hey is still so fresh. The production is so forward thinking for 1997. Again, Kylie ahead of the curve here, and remember, this is slightly before Madonna's Ray of Light, another artistic statement exploring electronica, and I can hear the sound in this with a lot of contemporary artists. Say Hey has that hypnotic, minimal electronic vibe that wouldn't feel out of place next to Kelly Lee Owens' Dream State material. They both play with texture, space, and a kind of cool detachment that feels immersive and intimate all at once. Track 7, Drunk. The electronic production continues, but this one is a bit harsher, a bit chaotic. Kylie's vocals are stronger on this track and it matches the instrumentation perfectly. Her lyrics, which you could say are poetry, and this is just prime example of Kylie's experimentation. The production is totally ahead of its time, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure what the critics were on in the UK when they were reviewing this record, because this is proof of Kylie's artistic progression. I mean, we want to see our favourite artists taking risks and creating art. This is something I touched upon on my first episode discussing the new Miley Cyrus record. This is something that I appreciate, and I may not have seen it back in 1997, but it's something that I appreciate now, and I applaud Kylie for having the guts to create something like this. Track 8, I Don't Need Anyone. This is the second track to feature the Manics, and I will be honest, this is my least favourite on the record. I just prefer the electronica and the experimentation compared to this. I love the Manics, don't get me wrong, but the production on this one is just a little bland for me, and again, it just sounds like a cut from Everything Must Go. It kind of sounds similar to Some Kind of Bliss, and I just wish that these two tracks written with the Manics, I just wish that the sound was expanded a little bit, you know, maybe bring in some synths, you know, they do sound quite similar alongside each other. The good thing is that I do like the track placement between the two songs. There is a bit of a gap between the two, so it doesn't feel like you've listened to the same song twice. I wouldn't listen to this song on its own, you know, in a playlist or whatever, but it still works in the context of the album. But I blame the flute. I don't like the flute. Track 9, Jump. Jump feels like a breath of fresh air within the darker textures of the album. It's lighter in tone with a pulsing, almost meditative groove that gives the track a sense of forward motion. There's a spaciousness to it. The synths ripple and the beats are gentle but persistent, and Kylie's vocal feels reflective, like she's quietly working through something internal. Lyrically, it's about risk, change, and surrendering to the unknown. It's not as emotionally raw as some of the earlier tracks, but it's still deeply personal in a quieter way. It's the kind of song that invites you to close your eyes and just float with it. I absolutely love the bass in this song and just gives me Massive Attack vibes, which I welcome. Track 10, Limbo. This one is a live favourite if you are a big Kylie fan. We have drums and guitar in the mix, and you can tell on this track that Kylie was influenced by Garbage and Bjork here. I would say that this one definitely feels 90s to me, but it still works in the record. It took me some time to fully warm up to this, but I love how the song progresses and Kylie's vocals become more passionate. Limbo is such a striking gear shift and full of energy, and it feels like Kylie is letting loose after all of the introspection. I would say that Limbo did click hearing it live. I think it really brought the track to life, and yeah, I love it now. It works really well in the track placement of the record. Track 11, Through the Years. So we've reached the penultimate track, and this one has a relaxed trip-hop feel to it, especially in the way it blends the down-tempo beats with atmospheric textures and those jazzy flourishes with the muted trumpet. It's really unexpected, but it's almost like Portishead meets lounge music, but filtered through Kylie's emotional lens. It's a really unique track, and it works really well coming towards the end of the record. The vocal production is really impressive here. The way how Kylie sounds and the vocal effects, it's really subtle and gorgeously detailed, and this track just shows how varied and experimental this album really is. Track 12, Dreams. The last track on the record, and the title of the album is mentioned here. The record's title is a reference to the 1994 book, Poems to Break the Hearts of Impossible Princesses, written by Billie Childish. Nick Cave gave Kylie a copy of the book when she started to work on the record, and gave Kylie the inspiration with the themes and the lyrical content. I absolutely adore how this track sounds. It's epic and lush with the strings and the bass. I love Kylie's vocals here, one of my favourite vocals she has ever done. I absolutely love the way she sings Impossible Princess. It's just amazing, and it just adds to the atmosphere of the song and closing out the record. My only criticism with the track, and hear me out on this is really tiny, but I just wish that we had an extended outro with the instrumental to really close out the record in epic fashion. I feel that it ends rather quickly, and I just feel that a song like this just needs to breathe at the end and just to go out with a bang. Like I said, this is just a very small criticism in my opinion. Do you agree or disagree? Impossible Princess was already delayed and took nearly 2 years to record and complete due to several changes in direction while the album was being made. The perfectionism of everyone involved also caused delays. The album was originally due for release in January 1997, but deconstruction postponed to May. then moved to September, despite copies of the album already printed. Following the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, on the 31st of August 1997, and the impact of her death in the UK, Kylie and Deconstruction delayed the record for a further 3 months and felt that the Impossible Princess title was inappropriate during a time when people were in mourning for Diana and the aftermath that followed. The album was retitled to Kylie Minogue in the UK and Europe, which was just so confusing as a 1994 release has the same title. The record was finally released on the 28th of March 1998. In 2003, the Impossible Princess title was reinstated for the remastered release, and as I have mentioned, the 25th anniversary edition of Impossible Princess was released on vinyl for the very first time. If you don't own a copy of this, honestly, the pressing is out of this world, and complete with the original artwork, it's just stunning, and the coloured pressings just match the artwork perfectly. I would say that the negative critical reception was mainly from UK publications. I went back and looked at reviews from outside the UK, and they praised the record and acknowledged the production, Kylie's artistic input, and commended her songwriting skills. I think the delays hurt the record looking back, and having Some Kind of Bliss as the lead single was the wrong move. A 3-year gap really isn't long between records, but back then there was no social media to help build momentum and keep that momentum going. The UK radio stations in 1997 and 1998 was not kind to Kylie. They once championed and supported her, but turned their backs when she veered into a darker, more experimental territory. Some of the singles received limited airplay. Thankfully, MTV Europe and VH1 UK had her videos on rotation, but it just wasn't enough. The genres that didn't align with what most mainstream UK radio stations were playing at the time, especially from a pop artist like Kylie. But here she was with a record that was just all over the place, genre-wise. This cold reception may have influenced Kylie's decision to return to her pop roots with her follow-up, Light Years. Looking back, it's clear that the UK press got it wrong. In 1997, Kylie was torn apart for daring to challenge expectations. Impossible Princess was labelled as self-indulgent, confusing, even career-threatening. But over time, the narrative has completely shifted. The same album that was dismissed back then is now seen as groundbreaking. Critics have come round to recognise just how bold and forward-thinking it was, with many calling it one of her most creatively fearless records. What was once seen as a misstep is now praised as a cult classic, proof that Kylie wasn't lost. She was evolving, ahead of the curve and unafraid to take risks. Pitchfork even grouped it with Ray of Light and The Velvet Rope as part of a late 90s trilogy of A-list experimental pop. It took decades, but the UK press has not only said sorry, they've come to celebrate this era as a creative triumph. It's the kind of re-evaluation that makes you wonder how different things would have been if Impossible Princess had been released in today's streaming era, where genre blending and personal storytelling are celebrated rather than punished. The reaction definitely shaped Kylie's future releases, returning to pop and disco with Light Years and then her biggest era in Fever. Maybe if there was no Impossible Princess, we wouldn't have had Kylie dominating the early 2000s like she did. Kylie can be proud of her cult artistic statement that it was ahead of the curve and highly influential. It's a strange record, a bold move for someone like Kylie, but she definitely set the trend of what was to come in pop music. It's not a pop record, but at the same time, it is still pop, and it can be difficult to decide what genre box to put it in. But that's what makes Impossible Princess so unique after all this time. I would say that a lot of the music released in the 90s is dated, and you could have that argument about any decade, to be honest, but when Pitchfork is putting this alongside Ray of Light and The Velvet Rope, and then Tori Amos releasing From the Choir Girl Hotel in 1998, which also dabbled in electronica and experimentation and is deeply personal, Kylie is in great company here, and Impossible Princess sits proudly and shines, and I am so glad that people have started to recognise this and finally give Kylie the credit she deserves. Even though Impossible Princess didn't get the recognition it deserved in 1997, its impact can be felt in the shift that followed. Just 2 years later, Dido's No Angel became a global success, rooted in soft electronic textures, emotional honesty, and we saw a shift in the folktronica sound. Madonna released Ray of Light in 1998 and Music in 2000. Both embraced electronica and introspection, but from very different angles. You could absolutely argue that Impossible Princess, and especially tracks like Say Hey, could have planted seeds that artists like Charlie XCX have picked up on years later. While Brat is sonically more abrasive and chaotic than Impossible Princess, they both share a fearless, experimental spirit, confessional lyricism, and an embrace of outside of pop aesthetics. Kylie was blending electronica and trip hop and introspection way before it became cool in mainstream pop. That same DNA runs through Brat. It's hard not to see Impossible Princess as part of the DNA and all of that. Even if it didn't shape the charts, it shaped the culture by proving that a mainstream female pop artist could break the mold and take risks and still be herself. Kylie was ahead of the game, and it just took the world a little time to catch up. What Kylie did with Impossible Princess wasn't just a detour, it was a quiet revolution. It predated Dido's folktronica, Madonna's electronica reinvention, and even the emotional, personal intensity of Tori Amos's Choir Girl Hotel. And now, with artists like Charlie XCX turning outside of pop into the mainstream, it's clearer than ever. Kylie didn't just keep up with the times, she helped shape what was coming. She opened a door that others have since walked through. Maybe the charts didn't get it in 1997, but pop history absolutely does now. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Throwback Friday series. I've enjoyed putting this episode together, and to be honest, when I started to plan the Throwback Friday, Impossible Princess was the first record that came to mind. If you have not heard this album, you are in for a treat. Talking of No Angel by Dido, stay tuned if you are a fan of that record, because in September the vinyl reissue is going to be released, and of course the Indie Pop Girl has got that on pre-order, and I will be dedicating a full episode to No Angel. So a little spoiler here, but I can't keep everything secret on this podcast, so stay tuned. Please follow me on Instagram at the Indie Pop Girl, where I'll be creating more content and mini reviews. and I am also lurking on AOTY and Reddit, so come say hello and let's talk about the music that moves us so much. I'd be grateful if you could follow, like, and share my podcast to help it grow, and I would love to connect with more music lovers out there. I've also created a public Spotify playlist and added some of my favourite tracks from the artists that I've already covered, and as the episodes grow, I'll be adding more, so if you are curious with any of the artists and albums that I've covered, please give it a listen and who knows, you might find a new discovery. I'll be back next week on Tuesday where I'm going to give you my Magdalena Bay Imaginal Disc Deep Dive. I just couldn't wait any longer to talk about this record, and it follows on nicely for my gig review episode, and then on Friday I'll be discussing another album and giving it the love it deserves. A little clue? I have already mentioned this band in this review somewhere, and the album I've picked is one that has just been forgotten. Let me know if you know what it is. Until then, I'm Rachel, the indie pop girl. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.